Noah has managed to find the only squeaky. All of his toys have the squeak taken out of them because I know that the squeak, I know it can bother other people who watch you have a dog because it can irritate the other dog. Plus it's an irritating noise. But he has managed to find the little round squeak out of one of the toys. Just as I roll, just as we're rolling, he's squeaking. As we roll, he squeaks. It's me, Jess. I'm so excited to talk about all of the books that I've purchased in the past. I think I haven't done a book haul since 2023, that's for sure. I think these are all of the books that I've purchased probably in the last maybe 6 months. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, maybe 4 months. Definitely from before Christmas. So I have a confession to make. We are going to talk about all of the books that I've purchased. I don't have a confession to make. I just wanted to say that there are mice in my house. It takes a brave human to get on the internet and talk about their inability to handle the mice. I'm just going to think of myself as being courageous for this confessional to all of my book lovers out there. I'm dealing with mice and it's not fun. So if you hear squeaking, it could be the squeaky toy or it could be mice. I promise I won't scream if we hear mice. Are you chasing the mice? The other thing is that Nola has been hunting the mice, not very successfully. And I have this eternal fear that he's gonna end up with a mouse and then I'm gonna have to deal with that whole situation. So that's how my week has been. Yes. Are we dealing with mice? Okay, so before we get into this massive stack of books, I've got these, I've got massive stacks of books. I didn't even count how many. I did want to just say that I have a read along starting this weekend for Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. It's great because it coincides with Black History Month. And there's still time to join if you're interested in joining us. I've set up a 6-week schedule. So I will leave all of the information about the read along in the description box below. Please join us. It would be so great to have you. Would love it. So what did I buy over the last few months? I'm going to start with the literary fiction and then we'll move on to some other stuff, historical fiction. I even have some science fiction, nonfiction, classic, one classic. So the first book that I got in this book haul, or the first book that I want to talk about in this book haul is Mother Dead by Vigdis Hjorth. This was longlisted for the International Booker last year, and it came on my radar because some booktubers had talked about it as being one of their favorite books of 2023. So I think this is about an artist who the subject of her artwork is motherhood, so I think it's about motherhood. I don't know that much more about it than that. I wanted to read more translated fiction, more translated works by women. When I saw this in the bookstore, I really couldn't resist. I had to pick it up. I also picked up, because it came out in paperback, Your Driver is Waiting by Priya Guns. This is a Canadian author, and so I first heard about this from Lindy because she talked about it as being one of her favorite, or maybe her favorite book from 2023. I had seen it in a bookstore and walked by it a couple of times and not picked it up. I was really kind of holding out for it to come out in paperback, and it's come out in paperback rather quickly. So that's exciting. This is a book with an interracial queer relationship, and I think it's supposed to be really good, not just as a story, but also as at exploring the relationship between someone who could be considered an ally and the work that they would still need to do or still could do. And I think it'll just be a really good read because it's been lauded by at least 2 booktubers that I really respect the opinions of. So really looking forward to this. And it's Canadian, which is a nice bonus. I really like it when a Canadian book makes a good impression on people on BookTube. So I debated picking up this next book, but because I'm nervous to read it, but I think it's really important to read books that make us uncomfortable and that we're nervous to read. And that's Minor Detail by Adania Shibley. I've heard people talking about this book, and it was out on a display in a table. I should say I will link the local bookstores where I went to pick up these books. I went to Drawn and Quarterly, which is a bookstore in Montreal's Mile End, and I also went to Librairie Saint Henri, which is another independent bookstore, which is in St. Henri. I didn't get all of them in indie bookstores, but I did do my best. I tried to pick them up mostly at indie bookstores. Minor Detail is another book that I've seen all over Instagram and people talking about because of the conflict, the violence in Gaza. I think I should read it. I think Gemma's reading this, if I'm not mistaken. I watched Kat's review of it. So it's a thin, slim book. I think it's meant to be quite upsetting. And it's about the experience of a Palestinian woman who is captured and raped by Israeli soldiers. Many years later, a woman who's going back trying to uncover the details about that particular crime. So it's going to be hard to read, but probably quite important. I think it's really important to read books that make us uncomfortable. Just reading is for pleasure, but reading is also for us to maintain our humanity, maintain our understanding. I read for pleasure, but I also read to educate myself, and I read to better myself as a human being. And part of bettering yourself as a human being is to read books that challenge you to face some of the more difficult things in human nature and in society, and to think about them. And I think that's just really important. If everybody did that, maybe the world would be completely different, right? And we can only hope. I also picked up In the Upper Country by Kai Thomas. I heard an interview with Kai Thomas on the radio. I was stuck in traffic, just sitting in my car, and I heard an interview with him. I can't remember if it was something on NPR or something on CBC. It sounded really good. I'd already had this book on my radar because I think Jolene did talk about this book. I think she spoke about this book when there was all the talk about the Giller Prize from last year, and there was some conversation about why this book was not recognized by the Giller, which is fair. I think it sounds really good. It's about two women. One of them has escaped slavery through the Underground Railroad, but it's also about a bounty hunter. Bounty hunters used to come over the border to capture escaped slaves into Canada, and I think that is the basis of the story. I think one woman is a reporter and one woman is in prison, but I don't know too much more about it from that. It sounds really, really good. I picked up All the Little Bird Hearts by Victoria Lloyd Barlow. I think this is about a mother and a daughter, and the neighbors get wind of something. I think there's a character who has autism as well, but I think it's like a mystery. I heard people talking about it in the context of the discussion around the Booker Prize, and it sounded interesting to me, so I went ahead and I picked it up. This is how I pick books up in the bookstore, because of people talking about them on BookTube. Actually, this next one I picked up because I talked about it on BookTube. This book, Yara by Tamara Faith Berger, is one of the books that I talked about when I was discussing the Globe and Mail's. I don't know if it was their top books of the year. I think it might have been their top books of the year, and this was one of the Canadian books because they had a separate section of Canadian books. And I was intrigued. This is about a young teenage daughter who's in love with a woman who's a decade older. Her name is Yara, the teenage girl, and her mother sends Yara away. She sends her to Israel, but I think to work on a kibbutz to get her away from this other woman who she's fallen in love with. And it just sounded really interesting. And I saw it in the bookstore and I thought, I gotta pick that up, because sometimes when you see these books in the bookstore, these ones that aren't everywhere and they're a little bit more obscure, you think, oh, I better pick that up because I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a hold of it otherwise. This one is published by Coach House Books. It's an indie press for sure. Coach House Books in Toronto. I'd like to read more indie books for sure. In terms of translated books, women's translated books, books in translation by women, I also picked up Claudio Pinero's A Little Luck because I'd heard really good things about this as well. Now, I'm really a sucker because I haven't read Elena Knows yet. I don't remember if I wrapped it for my wrapped TBR or if I just have it on my shelf. I definitely want to read it. But then, because everybody said so many good things about Elena Knows, I also thought, oh, I'm going to pick up her other book as well and just add another book. As long as it's in my house, it stands a much better chance of being read. Elena Knows was a finalist for the International Booker Prize in 2022. And this is Claudia Pinero's most recent publication. A Little Luck is a story about the debilitating weight of lies, the messy line between bravery and cowardice, and the tragedies, big and small, that can ripple out from a single decisive event. Takes place 20 years after a shocking accident. Definitely excited that I bought it. I don't know when I'm going to get to it. Maybe for Women in Translation Month. I kind of had that on my mind when I was shopping. I also got in paperback The New Life by Tom Crew. This was talked about a lot because it was on several award lists. I can't remember all of them. Oh, it's about two men who begin writing a book in defense of homosexuality when it was still a crime in Britain at the end of the 1800s in 1894. And it's just supposed to be excellent. I've heard really good things about it. And I really like this cover. I think it's cool. I mean, I'm hoping to read all of these, but I also like just to add books to my library so I have a selection. I take a lot of books out of the library, but I also like to purchase books, particularly if I think that they stand a really good chance of being ones that I really want to keep, that I want to enjoy, or that I might want to pass on to someone else. This book I just picked up because I saw it. One of those books where you just pick it up because you saw it and you're like, oh, I wonder what that's about. And then you read about it and you think, I really want to have that book. I want to read that book. Also, this has an introduction by Lauren Groff. This one is called A Woman Running in the Mountains by Yuko Tsushima. So again, this is a translated book by a woman. It's about early motherhood, and it's about a woman who leaves the hospital on foot to give birth to her baby. And I think that she's shamed about being pregnant, but I don't know very much more about it than that. And I kind of want to leave it a little bit. Sounds really good and might be another option for me for. And then it's thinking of my college reading vlog that I did last year. I was at a Christmas party at a friend's place who's an English teacher. And there was another English teacher there. And I saw this book on the shelf and I said, oh, I've never read anything by Zoe Whittall. And she said, oh, I teach this book in my class. And I thought, oh, interesting. I could read it for my college reading vlog. So this is her book, The Best Kind of People. I think that lots of people know about this book and have read it. I don't know anything about Zoe Whittall's books, and I've never read anything by her. I know that this is particularly about rape culture, or explores rape culture through the telling of the story, and that the characters are kind of gray characters, and the story is about George Woodbury, a teacher who gets arrested for sexual impropriety at a prestigious prep school. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever read anything by Zoe Whittall and what you thought. A couple of books from the used bookstore. I picked up this lovely Penguin English Library edition of The Middle on the Floss by George Eliot. As everyone knows, I read Middlemarch last year and loved it. I don't think I'm going to read Middle on the Floss this year because I kind of want to savor reading George Eliot, but I want to read it sometime in the next few years. So when I saw it at the used bookstore, I thought, oh, I've got to grab that. I also saw this one, The Master by Colm Tobin. The Magician is one of the books that I selected for my pile for the BookTube spin this year. I remember when I was describing that one, what The Magician was about, Henry James. This one is about Henry James. The other one is about Thomas Mann, I think. So this is supposed to be the story of Henry James. I don't know very much more about it, but I haven't read anything by Colm Tobin yet. And I know he has a new book come out, but I don't know. I have this, it's like this happens to me sometimes. I don't know if this happens to anybody else, but where I get this idea that I'm really going to like an author. I really find the concepts for their novels very interesting, like Colm Tobin, and I still haven't read anything. Just keep collecting their books and not reading them. It's not a good habit. This year I hope to break it either with the BookTube spin or by going ahead and reading The Master. We shall see. Then last year, before the end of 2023, I got excited about some books. Well, first of all, I got excited about some horror books, and also I picked up a copy of, or I ordered a copy of O Caledonia by Elsbeth Barker because Kim at Middle of the Book March was talking about this one, and she totally convinced me that it was great and that I should read it. So thank you, Kim. A darkly humorous modern classic about a doomed adolescent girl. Janet was found oddly attired in her mother's black lace evening dress, twisted and slumped in bloody murderous death. So begins O Caledonia, a Gothic tale that has been compared to the works of the Brontes and Edgar Allan Poe. People, birds, and beasts move through the background in a tale that is as rich and atmospheric as it is witty and mordant. Yes, this is going to go up. I think this is going to go up my list, even though I've had it for a little while. And then the three sort of horror books that I sort of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole of like, what are the best horror books ever? Or what are the best scary books ever? Or ghost novels ever? And then I ordered some of them because I wanted to get some options for Halloween last year. And I ended up getting these books anyway and not talking about them. The first is The Silent Companion by Laura Purcell. This is supposed to be a haunting story about a ghost, about a silent companion, and it's supposed to be like one of the best ghost stories or horror stories of all time. If The Silent Companions lands on your night table, don't plan on leaving your bed anytime soon. Immersive, meticulous, and reminiscent of the masters of Gothic fiction, not only a compulsively readable ghost story, but a skillful, loving ode to the entire genre. So I might read this before Halloween, but definitely this was purchased with Halloween in mind. Same for The Elementals by Michael McDowell. Again, this is a book that I had not heard of before until I started researching scary books and disturbing books. And this is a haunted house story, hence the haunted house on the cover. As a haunted house story, unlike any other, Michael McDowell's The Elementals, published in 1981, was one of the finest novels to come out of the horror publishing explosion of the 1970s and 1980s. So it's like a horror classic. So, yay. Excited about that. And then the last one in that little expedition to buy scary books is The Terror. Sounds like it could be good, but I'm not going to watch it before reading it, by Dan Simmons. And this is about men. Men on a boat called the HMS Terror that were out on the Franklin expedition. And I think that maybe this was inspired by The Wager. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong about that. I talked about The Wager when I was making book recommendations, but for the life of me, I can't remember if there's a link. So this is a fictional story about the idea is that they are stranded and that there's something really terrifying about that in and of itself, but there's also something out there in the wilderness. When I was at Librairie Saint Henri yesterday, I noticed this, The Truants by Kate Weinberg. I'd not heard of it, but it's a debut mystery. It's supposed to be very clever and very good. And I was like picking up a couple of debut authors to check out. And because it was on display, it kind of drew me in. And when I read the back, I thought, oh, I'll give it a try. So it's about Jess Walker, who I think it's a bit dark academia because it's based on Agatha Christie, or Agatha Christie plays a part in the story. It says Jess Walker has come to a concrete campus under the flat grey skies of East Anglia for one reason: to be taught by the mesmerizing and rebellious Dr. Lorna Clay, whose seminars soon transformed Jess's thinking on life, love, and Agatha Christie. She falls into a friend group and then something goes wrong. So it's got that academic mystery feeling. And also when I was at Librairie Saint Henri, I picked up the Becky Chambers, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Finally been convinced by all the booktubers out there who love Becky Chambers to give it a go. I don't even need to list all of the booktubers who have talked about this one and Becky Chambers in general, but I thought, okay, I've got to give Becky Chambers a go because so many people keep talking about her, and I'm really excited to try. I mean, by the time I talk about Becky Chambers books, everybody will have already read them. So that's okay. I'm getting on the bandwagon a little bit late. And then finally, I picked up a copy of Fall on Your Knees by Anne-Marie MacDonald. I realized I don't have a copy. And since having read Fane, it just reminded me how much I loved reading Fall on Your Knees when I first read it over a decade ago. It's set in Nova Scotia, which is where I'm from. And it's it's just one of those, it's a book that's like, it's a saga and it's wonderful, and I just really want to reread it. It's the story of the Piper sisters. Takes you through the life of these sisters, familial relationships and women's relationships, and it's just one of those sagas that's all set in the first half of the 20th century. And I just love this book and I want to reread it. And if anything will remind you of the Bronte books, it will be Fall on Your Knees. Look at the cover. Look at the ocean. Such a pretty cover too. The last one was I picked up Rogues. I talked about it, recommended it. It's a series of essays by Patrick Radden Keefe. Everybody I think knows at this point about Patrick Radden Keefe. Maybe this isn't his best. I've heard kind of mixed things because it's essays. I still picked it up because I thought it might be fun to dip into, and because I liked Say Nothing so much. It didn't take much to convince me to buy his latest set of essays. So this is all about, as it's described, grifters, killers, rebels, and crooks. I think it'll be really great to dip in and out of. So there we go. That is my book haul, my first book haul. Well, it's not my first book haul in terms of going out and getting the books, but it's the first time I film talking about the books that I've purchased and added to my library for 2024. Thanks everyone so much for watching. Again, if you want to join us for the Invisible Man read-along, all of the information and details are in the description box below, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye for now. Okay, of course I'm going to start with one whose name I can't pronounce. Of course we're going to start with one whose author's name I can't pronounce. Gosh, it must be boring to watch these videos. It's always the same blurbs, like the same... It's always the same bloopers, me mispronouncing names, Nola being a pain. Hope it doesn't get boring. In a way, I think maybe it's comforting to people, but I could be delusional. So I will leave all of the information linked in the description box below. Oh my god, I did put it in the now my hands are all wet and gross. Now I'm just gonna get it. He's so skilled at getting things. That's funny, that's Alice sending me a message about the plot alongs. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have so many books to read.